Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Right School Matters podcast, where we dive deep into the world of K-12 education, tackling some of the big questions and critical topics of our nation's schools today. My name is Paul Monaperto, and I am privileged to serve as your host. And so whether you are looking at moving or considering different school options, or simply want to better understand what might be a great educational fit for your child and your family, this podcast can help guide you and empower you because we believe that when it comes to our children's future, the right school truly matters. This podcast is sponsored by Family to Family Relocation and Real Estate, your experts in both schools and homes. Their mission is to partner with families looking for great educational options for their kids when relocating to a new area or searching for a new home. So today we are excited to, or I am excited to welcome Dr. Kara Loftin on the Right School Matters podcast with me. Kara is the head of school at the Schenck School located in Buckhead, which is just north of Atlanta. Kara, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you're here. And I really have been looking forward to this conversation since you were willing to sign up and be a part of the podcast and this idea of dyslexia. For folks who don't know the Schenck School, it is a school that is designed and built specifically to serving students in kindergarten through sixth grade with dyslexia and some supplementary learning challenges as well. And so that's going to be the bulk of our conversation. But before we dive into that, Kara, share a little bit about who you are and a little bit about the Schenck School.
Sure, I'd love to. So I'm a pretty joyful educator, and I hope there are so many more of us out there. And I think there are. But I love the work that I do, and it's such an honor and privilege to do it and to serve these families and children. So I've been in education now for 26 years, which is a long, long time. And I started as a teacher and kind of did that pathway that many teachers find themselves on through administration. And even back in my very first year of teaching, I recognized so quickly, and I was teaching high school students, actually. 21 years of my career, by the way, was in high school. Wow. So there you go. There's a little fun fact. But I recognized pretty quickly the kind of discrepancy in reading and writing ability within my students, and how that really impacted how they were able to really take in information and then use it in a meaningful way. And so my very first year of teaching, I remember turning to my now husband and telling him, like, I need to teach kids how to read. And I had no idea at that point about dyslexia, or learning disabilities. I did not have the educational background to be teaching reading. Certainly, I could be a teacher, but I just didn't have that specialized knowledge. But I saw something in my classroom, and I kind of made that kind of stake in the ground of, like, I'm going to do this one day. And then lo and behold, it was about almost 15 years later, not quite, but almost, where I went back to school to really dig into dyslexia and to learn more about struggling readers and literacy. And then from there, like, I never turned back. So there you go. So that's kind of how I got into this, kind of stayed in this work and evolved into kind of the specialized work that I'm in now.
Right. And you've been at the Schenck School is this your second year?
This is my second year at the Schenck School. Yes. And I started in that neurotypical environment, kind of your traditional school. And for most of my career, I was in a traditional school and bringing specialized services into that traditional school. I started a school within a school at a time where those were few and far between.
Right. Becoming more and more common today.
Yeah, the landscape now has changed, and it's wonderful that it has, because for kids who learn differently, there are lots of options available. So that's really great. But yeah, and then the last 5 years I've been working in schools specifically for children either with language-based learning differences, a little bit broader, or dyslexia specifically.
Right. And you've been at the Schenck School now for 2 years.
Yes.
And I appreciate your comment about the school within the school concept growing largely, certainly within the last few years. We're seeing many more traditional schools having to create academic support programs of some sort. And the reality is that what's driving that is more and more kids are being identified as being neurodiverse.
Right.
And so when you think about this dyslexia specifically, 1 in 5 people have dyslexia.
Mm-hmm.
That's 20% of our population. That's a large number of people, not just kids, but adults as well. And so naturally, it's good to see a lot of schools championing this effort to make sure they figure out ways to appropriately teach students who have dyslexia and the different strategies that go with that. And so tell us a little bit about Schenck School and the model used there, the program, and how it's used to serve supporting kids with dyslexia.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we are a school of 250 students, kindergarten through 6th grade. And we have our own Schenck School reading model. It's all based in research, evidence-based practice. And it leans heavily into Orton Gillingham, the Orton Gillingham approach.
Sure.
And so our model is a remedial model, which is very different and continues to be different kind of in the landscape of schools who support these neurodivergent kids. So for our students, they'll be at the Schenck School for 1 to maybe 3 years tops. And then they're matriculating back out into the best private and public schools in Atlanta.
Right.
And that's a really important part of our mission, is to be able to build up a student's confidence, get them reading and writing really well and proficiently, and then sending them back into kind of that population, that mainstream population of students, where they can really thrive and continue to soar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's important. Like you said, the mission of the school is not for kids to come and stay a very long time. They are identified with dyslexia, language-based learning difference, and the environment in which they're in is not able to support them at the level that they need the support. And so they're grateful if they're fortunate enough to come and be a part of the Schenck School, then they receive that remedial support to where they develop the strategies, and now they can, like you said, go out and soar and thrive in some of the areas, both public and private schools. And so dyslexia, I was just, as I was prepping for our conversation, I kind of went back to my time. I spent 20 years in K-12 education, and certainly now serving as an educational consultant and working with families that are looking for additional schools to attend based on the children's needs. I recall, working in special education in the public schools here in the state of Georgia, and it wasn't until 2019, so 6 years ago, when Senate Bill, I think it was 48, identified dyslexia as an exceptionality in the state of Georgia. Absolutely. And certainly we were working with kids for years who we knew had dyslexia. And so we were able to support them, but under specific learning disability, exceptionality. Right. And that's how we drove their IEP. And so in these last 6 years, again, just most of my time being spent here in the metro Atlanta area, it feels like this dyslexia has just catapulted to the forefront. It has become a large part of conversations in education. Like you said, more schools within schools are developing. Even some of the larger organizations made for dyslexia and things of that nature are just taking a center stage and really trying to educate the general public on what dyslexia is and how, no matter what your age, you can go and find support to become a better reader and writer.
Yeah.
And so with that said, I know that the Schenck School has a organization called ReadSource.
Yes.
And you're a large part of that. And so can you tell our viewers and listeners what ReadSource is and its mission and how that is utilized to help support literacy in the Metro Atlanta area and beyond?
Yes. So ReadSource really has three functions. We work directly with students, whether those are adult learners or teenagers, diagnosed or not diagnosed, but struggling readers, and then also with children. And so those direct services, there is a remediation specialist or a dyslexia specialist who will work one-on-one and all the way up to three-on-one with one of these individuals who struggle with reading. And we do that in the purpose-built schools of Atlanta. We have some partnerships with local public schools, and we have an adult dyslexia program as well as what we call our Shine program. And those are for teenagers and adolescents who are struggling to read for that one-to-one. It's a lot of our teachers who will give of their time to tutor students for free. And then we also have staff members as well who kind of push in and do these services. In particular, like our purpose-built schools of Atlanta, we have 8 remediation specialists who are embedded full-time into Slater Elementary and Price Middle School.
Okay.
And so that's a pretty wonderful service that we're able to provide. And for those students, they are students who do not have a diagnosis of dyslexia. For many students, that official diagnosis is a barrier or could be a barrier to them receiving services. And we just say, we don't want any of that. There's enough barriers to them getting this high quality instruction.
Right.
And so if you're struggling to read, you don't have to be identified as dyslexic. We want to work with you and help you really thrive. So that's one part of ReadSource, and
That's fantastic.
It's such a beautiful thing that we are able to do just right here in Atlanta, in our backyard. And then another piece of ReadSource is all of our teacher training. And so far we have trained about 500 educators this year alone. It's mainly in that Atlanta or Georgia actually area. Although we have reached past our state to 13 other states. And those 500 educators translates to about 10,000 students a year who
Outstanding.
have this wonderful newly trained teacher who can really help them with structured literacy and hopefully get them going and get them feeling good about what they can accomplish and become. And then the third part with ReadSource is advocacy. And you mentioned the Senate Bill 48. We were part of all of those committees and talks, with the dyslexia task force. And that was a game changer in Georgia with the dyslexia screening, and a really good first step towards hopefully more awareness and now more intervention in public schools to really support students in their literacy.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And it's really good to see the commitment made, certainly by public schools, but also several of the private schools that are just enhancing their ability to serve neurodiverse students. There's private school education. If you go back 2-3 decades, for the most part, it was very traditional. And now, and certainly in speaking from personal experiences, I have an opportunity to engage with lots of different types of private schools. The innovative practices are growing, and they have to, because the private schools will likely become extinct if they don't alter and shift. Because what you end up having is fractured families, right? Because not every student or every child in a family has neurodiverse needs. And so schools are trying to create opportunities to serve a more diverse set of learners. And we're seeing that. And there's certainly a long way to go there. But to your point, there are some wonderful resources out there for schools and teachers to take advantage of to become better trained and support the students and families there. Dyslexia, we're talking a lot about that. But
Yeah.
what is it? there may be people listening to us or watching, and they're just, okay, dyslexia, isn't that when you just flip your letters? Um, can you give us a little bit of a deeper dive into what is dyslexia, and how does it show itself in student learning?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of complex answers to that
Sure.
question, but I'm going to try to keep it not
Yeah,
so complex.
please. Yes.
Um, because really, dyslexia in its simplest form is just when you continue to struggle to lift those words off of a page, to be able to decode, to read the words, um, despite, you know, proper instruction, all of the opportunities in the world, you're still struggling with it. Dyslexia is neurobiological in origin. We know there's some neural pathways that are different in a dyslexic brain, and how things function. There's no correlation with intelligence. I love to make sure that people understand that. In fact, many dyslexics that you meet are very bright, very capable.
Absolutely.
And so that's important to know. Because if you think about it, when you go to school, everything that you are measured upon, really, like all of your pathways to learning, if you will, it's through reading print material, whether that's digital print or, you know, piece of paper. And so it's kind of your gateway to more knowledge and more learning. And yet for kids with dyslexia, it is a gate. It's the gate that's keeping them out of
Right.
learning, if you will. So those two pieces I think are important, the neurobiological and the intelligence piece of it. So for kids with dyslexia, they also tend to, there might be some processing speed, challenges that they have, working memory challenges. And it kind of all comes down to, there's this very fancy word called orthographic mapping. And it's basically how our brain imprints a symbol to a sound. And so with a dyslexic learner, that imprint is really challenging, right?
Right.
It doesn't come automatically. So for those who don't have dyslexia, we're able to pick it up, put it together, make sense of it, and then we retain it. And it just stays there, it sticks. And so for kids or individuals with dyslexia, that's hard. And they don't have that kind of visual mind mapping between that sound and that print. So that's kind of what dyslexia is, but really it's just struggling to read.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that. And that's where I think parents and teachers get concerned. Certainly, if we're considering, that time, that developmental period when kids are younger and they're first learning their letters and their sounds and how to put those pieces together through phonemic awareness, and when they begin to see those struggles, that's when a lot of those red flags go up.
Right.
And so for parents who have children who are struggling readers or even maybe newly diagnosed with dyslexia, what kind of encouragement and advice would you give to those families?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to speak as a mom here. And what I would say first is stop blaming yourself. You didn't do anything wrong.
Well said.
And then I would say there is such a bright future ahead. So the opportunities are out there. The access is out there. Your child can learn to read and will learn to read. And so, you can continue with those big hopes and dreams for your child, because there's a lot of really great services available.
Great. Well said. Thank you. And I really appreciate you pointing out the intelligence factor, because I believe for many years that was not the association, even in a classroom,
Right.
unfortunately. And, those kids' spirits were crushed because then they just felt less than, inferior. And so the reality is it's just we've developed a better understanding of the neurodiversity and the activity in the brain for how that wiring is created, and how to best support those kids through that. And if what I love about some of these organizations, like, is it Made by Dyslexia, Made for Dyslexia?
Yeah, Made by Dyslexia.
Made by Dyslexia. They tout, some big names around the world that people would know, celebrities and things of that nature, who are certainly brilliant, who have dyslexia.
Yes.
And a lot of their path was charted because of the way their brain is wired.
Mhm.
And they may not have achieved that success had their brain been wired differently. And
Mhm.
so I think it's important for kids to see that. And I know the Schenck School does a really good job of putting that out in front of kids so they can see those models of the types of heroes that are out there who have dyslexia.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think for me, I think the biggest gift. So people talk about gifts of dyslexia,
Right.
and certainly there are many times when it does not feel like a gift, and it is challenging and painful. But I'd say the gift of dyslexia is the resilience that you build,
Right.
and that it's all of those kind of softer skills or pieces, like a strong work ethic, understanding how to be tenacious and to never give up, doubling down and just, that perseverance that you need, grit, all of those elements that I think you learn as a kid with dyslexia, that is a gift that you are given in that sense,
Absolutely.
because those are the skills that will then take you so far in life, in your career, in your family life, kind of all of those pursuits that you have as an adult. It's never giving up, persistence,
Yeah.
grit.
So true. Yeah. Preach it, girl. That is so true. And again, we're talking about 1 in 5,
One
20% of the
in 5.
population. Yeah,
Yes.
it's crazy. So I got one more question for you in this space, and then we'll transition to another topic. So when you envision the future of K-12 education, certainly, based on your many years experience of being in education and these last several years of being in neurodiverse education, what do you see being some of the major growths and shifts in K-12 education, whether that be specifically for serving students with dyslexia and neurodiverse needs, or just in general?
Yeah. I mean, and this is such a big question because I think there are many strands right now that we're seeing kind of unveil themselves,
Hmm.
AI and how that
Absolutely.
is impacting education. But I'm going to say maybe it's more, where I see that we're going is that there is an openness and a willingness to look at learning differently in terms of how we present material, how we take it and use it, and then how we then show our learning, if you will. For example, old school, right? Essays, blue book, pen and paper,
Mhm.
tests. I think there's a larger awareness and understanding that you can be a very intelligent, incredibly sophisticated learner, complex thinker, and be sharing that learning in a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to come from you doing a multiple choice test or a blue book exam. Um, there's just many ways. You could be innovative and building a project, using your hands to build a solution for a real world problem that really embeds all of these different skills that you've learned along the way, for example. So I'm hopeful for that there's a kind of broader understanding of how we even assess our learning.
Well said. And to that point, I mentioned earlier about the traditional aspect of schools for many, many years. I wholeheartedly believe that if schools who are not willing to embrace that innovative approach and philosophy and continue to do school the way it was done 20, 30, 40 years ago, they will become extinct.
Mhm.
Because the world has changed enormously. And you mentioned AI. I mean, we don't even know what that's going to look like even in 5 to 10 years,
Yeah.
because that's trending very quickly and already doing amazing things for
Yeah.
schools that are willing to embrace that idea. But there's a lot of schools that are still very afraid of it. And I get it. I understand. But yes, no, I appreciate you sharing that. It's I think it's an exciting time personally for education, because we know that if you're looking at that personalized approach to learning, seeing kids for who they are as a person, as a human being, instead of a number in a seat or a name in a grade book, then we are compelled to want to best support that individual. And now with technology and resources and a more open-minded, I think was the word that you used, approach, we have the ability to maybe infuse the joy, that was a word you used early on, back into learning, not just for the kids, but for the teachers too. Um,
Absolutely.
and I'm excited for that to happen as we move forward. All right.
Yes.
Thank you, Kara, for sharing your thoughts and experiences and deep knowledge of dyslexia and neurodiverse education. I want to shift gears real quickly. We've got a few minutes left, and talk about where the Schenck School is located in Buckhead, which is just north of Atlanta. I know that you are in your second year, and you moved to Georgia. Is it from Pennsylvania?
I was in the New Jersey, New York City area.
Okay, so you're in the Tri-City area there. Certainly very different than Atlanta, Georgia. But I know that you've taken advantage of the many wonderful things there are to enjoy in the metro Atlanta area. And so for our viewers and listeners who are not familiar with Buckhead or Sandy Springs or the North Atlanta area, I'd love for you to share a little bit about what you've learned and the things that you do. So for example, what's a favorite restaurant or two that you really enjoy in the area?
Okay, I'm going to give you two.
Okay.
One is right in the heart of Buckhead. It's called Zakia, and it's a Lebanese restaurant, and it's just fantastic. The food is
Wow, I do not
delicious.
know that one. Yeah, okay,
It's
Zakia.
delicious, and the restaurant is beautiful.
Cool.
And it works for a date night to business, you name it. And the other one will be a surprise. So it's actually in Doraville, and it's Calaveritas Taqueria Vegana.
Okay.
Vegan tacos out of a window in an industrial strip, and it's like a middle of nowhere. You think you didn't take the right turn, and I'm telling you, take the turn, because the food is delicious.
Those
Um,
are usually the best places.
yeah. So there's one picnic table outside, but typically you just take it to go, and it's just fantastic.
Awesome.
So I love that place.
Awesome.
And yeah.
Good. I'm definitely going to take Tiffany. We're going to go enjoy. We love both of those types of food. Um, for someone who is visiting or thinking of relocating to the Metro Atlanta area, and maybe doesn't know much about it, share a couple of things that are fun to do, some experiences, places to visit that you've really enjoyed during your stay here the last year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah. So I think what's surprising with Atlanta is that there are just a plethora of hiking trails and outdoor opportunities right here in the city. Like, you don't think it exists, and because it's a city of trees, you can't see anything, right? But they're all right here, whether it's the Beltline or it's like East Palisades, Chattahoochee River, National Recreation Area. It's all right here, and Buckhead has fantastic trails, hiking trails to go on, and it won't take you more than 10 minutes to drive to something, if that, to start a trail. So I think that's really fun in Atlanta. That's probably my favorite thing to do.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And you don't equate outdoor fun with city life. But you're right. Atlanta is very different when compared to some of the larger cities around the country. So there you have it, folks. If you're in Atlanta, take advantage of being outdoors and exploring, some of the recreation and parks right there in the middle of the city. Well, Kara, any last words for our viewers and listeners?
Just thank you for having me, and continue to learn and enjoy that learning. I said it before, I'll say it again. I'll end with that note: is learning should be joyful.
Amen. Yes. And it can be. We just have to decide that it should be.
Yeah.
And so the schools that make that decision are schools that folks should be really considering. And so thank you, Kara. I really appreciate you being with me today, folks. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out another episode of the Right School Matters podcast. And we just ask that you, if you would like, subscribe to the channel and watch and learn the many different things that we'll be talking about around education. And so with that, I wish you a great day and God bless.
Thanks.